I'm Erin Huebert. I am a principal researcher at LeanLab Education. We are headquartered in Kansas City, but we work nationally and even internationally. One of the types of research that we do at LeanLab is implementation pilots. So much of LeanLab's research, but specifically implementation research, is putting an ed tech company and matching them with school partners and really understanding, how the tool works in an authentic environment with authentic users, and really trying to get to this understanding of how the tool can successfully be used in the classroom, and more importantly, how to keep it engaged among teachers and students. So let's get started. What are implementation pilots? So the way that I like to describe them is that the goal of an implementation pilot is really to establish guidelines for how the tool can create and sustain long-term engagement, among end users in that authentic context. So if your tool is meant for elementary students in grades 3 through 5, we want to study how that looks with elementary students in grades 3 through 5, right? So that's what we mean by an authentic context. And we are really looking to get it to the point where teachers and students are using it exactly like it's meant to be used, that all the features are being used, that it's being, not sitting on the shelf. So some of the guiding research questions that we're looking for are like, what are those most effective techniques to integrate that product? So how do teachers really use it? Like, should it be with small groups? Should it be with whole group instruction? Is it meant to be a supplemental tool? So all of those teaching techniques are what we're looking for. And then also, what kind of contextual factors might influence the success or failure of implementation? So this could be anything from, if you find out like the tool is not meant for big groups, so class sizes of more than 30, those are contextual factors. Or if there's something about the type of learners, and you find that if you have all learners with an IEP trying to use it at one time, that's not successful, right? So any kind of those contextual factors is what we're looking for. So why should you, if you are a tech entrepreneur, conduct an implementation pilot? So as I mentioned, what we find, and I think what we don't want to have happen, is a school district, a school, maybe even a teacher buys the tool and it ends up sitting on the shelf. And we find we have lots and lots of empirical evidence of this, that school districts are spending, upwards of millions of dollars on ed tech products, and then they find that no one's using them. And so that's what we don't want to have happen. Or maybe they're using it currently, so we're trying to keep that happening. We don't want it to get on the shelf. And so what we're really looking for in an implementation pilot is what is needed to maintain use, but high quality use, right? How to get to that level of engagement. Again, that's going to be sustaining and not have your tool sit on the shelf in a year's time. And so to get that, what we're looking for is these clear evidence-backed classroom best practices. What you can do with that then, and this is why it's really important, even just from a sales perspective, is that when you go to a new school district, you can say to the administrators or to the teachers, like, we've done research to find out how exactly teachers need to use it for there to be success, for there to be engagement. So you don't need to worry that you're going to spend all this money and then no one's going to use it, because here we have this evidence to show this is exactly how it needs to be used for there to be success. So what we're really looking to get to is that teacher fidelity. We want all teachers using it more or less the same way. I mean, obviously there'll be some variation, but we're looking for that way of like, how is it that teachers can use it more or less with fidelity with their students? Because the other important part of this, and we don't necessarily do this in implementation, but what we're doing is setting you up for a more effective efficacy study, so that when you have teachers using it the same way, and then ideally you're having students use it the same way, then you can start to understand what is the impact my tool is having on the outcomes that you care about. Without that kind of level of fidelity, if you have teachers using it all different ways and usage is all over the place, you're not going to have a good efficacy study. You're probably not going to find good results. And by good, I mean just any results. It's not that they're good. It's not that they're bad. It's just that you're not finding results because you have so much variation in how the tool is being used. So if you can get to a point where your tool is being used with fidelity, then we can say, okay, good. Now let's try to understand the impact here. We don't have to account for all of that variation. And then we're likely to at least discover what the impact is. Okay, so if you are thinking about doing an implementation pilot, I would say that there are three main things that you would need to do to get yourself ready. The first is to have done usability testing. So an implementation pilot is really not meant for early stage, like you just started your tool, right? These are a little bit more for mid to later stage companies. But at the very least, you should have done some usability testing to have evidence that your tool is easy to use and free of all those technical glitches. So for example, if we were to say to the teachers, okay, I need you to sign up, I need you to find the teacher dashboard, I need you to find where the lesson plans are, all those things, the teacher should be able to do that on their own with very, very little training. And of course, free of all technical glitches. The second big thing is that if your tool requires any integration, like make sure that's already set up. For example, Clever for student rostering, any of those things should already be integrated. And then the third thing here, have an idea. So if you don't have any idea how the teachers or students or staff, whoever it is going to use it, you're actually at one stage earlier type of research, which we call feasibility research, which is discovering like, how do teachers use it? For implementation, you at least need to have an idea of how you want them. So imagine you're going to give a training and you are going to tell the teachers, this is how to use it. You need to have a set of those guidelines. And then what we're going to do in the implementation research is essentially validate those guidelines that this is in fact how we want teachers to use it. This is the successful way, and what are the ways that need to be modified from there. But we don't want to come up with the guidelines from scratch with implementation research. Last slide is your steps for getting started. The first thing you would want to do is establish a budget. Nobody wants to necessarily talk about the cost of this sort of thing, but it can be fairly costly, but there's also very big ranges depending on where you go. So establish what kind of budget you have to do implementation research. The second step, of course, would be to find a third-party research organization to help you. I think it's very hard to do this kind of research on your own. You could certainly try, but one of the benefits of a third-party organization is to, do the design for you, collect the data, analyze it, basically, do all the work for you. But also, again, when you go to districts and to buyers, you can say that you had a third party do your evaluation, and then that just lends a bunch of credibility as well. And so then finally, when you found that third-party research organization, one thing you should be prepared for is which schools you want to pilot this with. So some companies or some research organizations like LeanLab, we can sometimes help find schools for you to partner with. With implementation research, it's actually really helpful to do it with any of your existing partners. So I would say just be prepared to have some school partners brought to the table if you have school partners already.